I'm running for mayor because I believe Newton needs strong, bold, transparent, and accountable leadership in the city. There are a lot of issues facing our city, whether it's restoring confidence in our school system, whether it's addressing the out-of-scale development that we see in the community and in our neighborhoods, whether it's preserving historic resources throughout the city, or it's just trying to be a much more inclusive and active community in terms of our decision-making process.
With 20 years of city council experience under her belt, Sangiolo believes she is equipped to collaborate.
So I learned how to collaborate with my fellow city councilors, as well as having served under two different mayors, both Mayor Cohen and Mayor Seti Warren. I learned how to work with constituents, particularly with neighborhoods. I reached out, went to the people, to the folks who had concerns, to understand and listen with real empathy, to again, get a real sense of what their concerns were so that I could be better equipped to address them in front of the council.
Her career history gives her a broad perspective of the needs of different types of community members.
I have a real understanding of what it's like to be an immigrant, not only from my mother, who is a Japanese immigrant, but also my work as a pro bono attorney helping disabled clients in their interview and citizenship process. I know what is needed. What's needed is support system. What's needed is people to advocate on their behalf, whether it's housing, whether it's economic assistance, and sometimes it might just be a helping hand to reach out.
As a first-generation college student, she understands how diverse the needs of Newton students are.
I came from a community that the college rate was not high. And moving here to Newton, I understand that many struggle here. We try to offer as many educational supports as possible, but I don't think that we do enough. Certainly with social emotional learning, we know that children have their own lived experiences that they bring to the table. I, as someone who came from with a mother who was an immigrant and was not wealthy, did not come from a privileged background, had similar struggles to some of the folks that we see here. We have to recognize that that these struggles impact their learning. And if we don't have either the support system, and it's not just funding, but it's a support system for our teachers as well as our children and their families, then it becomes that much more difficult for them to thrive and to move forward.
Having watched the beginning of the pandemic unfold, she is prepared to move Newton ahead during these unprecedented times.
So I am definitely one that follows the CDC, and the CDC guidance has come out recommending that we have indoor masking requirements, as well as wearing masks if you're outside in a crowded environment. And today I announced that that's one thing that I would definitely institute immediately, and I hope that our current mayor does that. I'm very concerned, particularly with the potential closing of schools. I hope that doesn't happen. Hopefully we will be better prepared than we were last time, because we were very delayed in reopening our schools, unlike other communities. I happened to work on a task force, it was called Safer Teachers, Safer Schools, trying to get asymptomatic testing into a program into our schools, but that was met with reluctance from the current administration. I also think that it was very poor planning in not having our ventilation systems tested and upgraded in time, and that's something that I would make sure as mayor that is instituted and that a plan is in place, and that we collaborate with the expertise, not just from the medical experts, but the parents who are in the scientific field, to collaborate and figure out the right reopening plan.
She is dedicated to making sure businesses here in Newton have the right support.
One thing I would definitely want, and one thing that I had ran on last time when I ran for mayor, was to have a small business person dedicated to reach out to our small businesses in our village centers. They do not have the kind of outreach and support that I believe that they need, and it has to be constant. It's not just because there's an emergency or the pandemic. It has to be consistent if we're going to make sure that they thrive.
Sangiolo is known well for her weekly newsletters. She believes that her ability to communicate and knowledge of the inner workings of the city makes her best fit for mayor.
So I started it back when the city council was discussing the leaf blower ordinance. One of my constituents said, "How come we don't know what you guys do?" And I said, that's a very good criticism. So I decided to put together a weekly newsletter that says what the city council was doing. And then I realized, oh, people don't know what our city boards and commissions are doing or what the school committee is doing. And so I want to make sure that the information I provide helps empower our residents so that they have the knowledge so that they can go to their representatives and give their input. And I think that's important, and unfortunately the city has not stepped up to do that.
Her leadership style, past experiences, and plans to move forward make her different from the other candidates.
So I have longer experience serving with the city, 20 years of experience serving on the city council. I have a reputation that has been built on being accessible and responsive and also accountable. All of my 3 children have gone to Newton Public School, so I have a real stake in the public education and restoring public confidence in our education as well. Of the 20 years that I served on the city council, 18 of those years was on the zoning and planning committee, so I know what needs to be done to address our out-of-scale developments here in the city, and I will move forward with it. I have a reputation for being a bold leader with bold ideas, and I have followed through on that. Particularly in 2014, I was the one who proposed a tear-down moratorium, and it was a temporary one. And I met with a lot of opposition and a lot of support, and I stood up to a crowd on my 50th birthday, and I was more than willing to do that because nobody else was addressing the out-of-scale development that we're seeing from the tear-downs and the rebuilds.
She has many goals she would like to achieve. Some right when she gets into office, and others in the long term.
Priorities would be education, restoring confidence in our schools, making sure that the teachers and the students have the resources and funding that they need to excel. In terms of zoning, I want to make sure that we get a handle on the out-of-scale developments and that we become the community that actually invites developers here for the kind of development that we want. I want us to be a much more inclusive community, bring all stakeholders to the table and not just listen to outside consultants. In terms of affordable housing, I currently work at the Attorney General's office trying to keep people in their homes, so I understand what it's needed in terms of affordability, and we do need more real affordable housing throughout the city. And I believe that the city should step up, and I would be leading on that in terms of subsidizing and working with leveraging CPA funds so that we can subsidize more and more units of affordable housing throughout the city. In terms of the environment, that is like top notch on my agenda, and I think the city needs to lead on that by actually making when we go and we say we want to electrify our buildings, throughout the city. Well, let's start with the city buildings first. Let's make sure we are a leader in that. Make sure that we have someone to educate the public on what's out there, on how we can become more carbon neutral community, and also market all the different programs that are out there, and that's something that we have not done, and that's something that I will do in the next 4 years if elected.
She has a detailed plan for how to improve communication and collaboration once in office.
Communication is essential, and I think that's something that we have failed to see in the past 4 years, and that's something that I would continue to do if I am elected as mayor. As you mentioned before, I have that newsletter that goes out weekly. I would have weekly meetings with different stakeholder groups to make sure that we're on top of all the different issues that are impacting Newton. Particularly with the school parents, I think there needs to be much more communication, although I would be just one vote on the school committee, I would be the leading voice on the school committee, so I would make sure that there is actual interaction between the school committee as well, and the parents and families. In terms of the city council, like I said, I served on the city council for 20 years. I expect that the mayor should be collaborating more often and be in communication.
The race is between 3 candidates now. The preliminary election will be held on Tuesday, September 14th. I'm Nicole Mader with Newton News.